This next story has been suppressed by mainstream media. Let's go to Andreas for more.
Everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.
Hello. Welcome to the Xirtus. Tune in for another exciting episode of wonder, imagination, and discovery.
Recent Tartarians.
Метафорно образует всеобщие закономерности, определяющие законы классической физики для нашего
Sometimes I
мира.
look at the moon and just think, the skin's beautiful.
Baby, when I met you, there was peace unknown.
Что касается энергии наномер, то она превышает ядерную в немыслимое число раз. 10 в 74 степени.
That's it. That's it. That's it. With your arms now. That's it. That's it.
Thank you for watching Xirtus. Keep listening. Remember, if you enjoyed the video, please follow and subscribe and share and support. It really helps. Coming up next, Xirtus.
By the way, that's gone. If you didn't record that, that's gone forever. It's gone.
How about that internet? Is it working?
Here we
Can
are.
you see me?
Yes, and you're a fluid.
For a second. It'll surely go back to 140p, but good to see you, Raf. How are you? You look, the lighting is warm there. That's good.
Yes, and I actually tripped into the sun, so
Nice. I got some sun recently, too. It was nice. It was that sunlight. I went outside, and it was, like, gray today, and it was so bright, and I felt like I didn't have sunglasses, and I was like, man, my eyes. I spent so much time inside. It was like the Matrix, like your eyes. You've never used them before. It was so bright.
I mean, I can understand that. I just been in Hungary, and the sun there is scorching, and all I remember, because I don't have like a sun hat or something, me like walking around kind of squinting all the time. So yeah, very bright sun.
Well, you've got a list for August 7th, which is contemporaneously the day that this is recorded, and there's been a number of events on the world stage that are worth talking about. I'm curious to see your list.
Yeah, so basically I've been offline for like 2 weeks, so anything too recent I have no clue of, new developments. So
That's good, because basically everything happened 2 weeks ago, and they've just been kind of spinning it. You know what I mean? Like, so it's perfect.
That makes sense. So, oh yeah, right. Because the one thing I don't know is if I have audio here, but we don't even necessarily need it. Let's see. Because I think
If you open through a tab instead of through your window share, the tab has audio.
Right. All right. But here we don't need it. I'll just have to show this stuff. Let's see. Here we are. Right. So, as I'm sure you've discussed endlessly on your channel by now, the whole Trump thing. So I just wanted to point out that there is this behavioral panel, guys. Unfortunately, I don't remember anymore what their main points were, but it's just interesting with any of these events, if you have people that are as much as possible unbiased, and then just in this case give you behavioral analysis, in this case of the crowd that was seen behind Trump. Just something to point out. I initially found these guys through some other interviews, but I forgot which ones. But anyhow, something interesting to listen to, just have a, how should I say, expertise in a certain area and analyze it only from that perspective, not with any foregone conclusions or anything like that. So I think that's an interesting approach in order to determine what really happened and why maybe some people acted strange or not.
I thought it was interesting. I just going to quickly, in response to that, yesterday I mentioned how I'd seen Trumbo's film, Trumbo being one of the Hollywood 10 who was blacklisted for his ties to communist sympathy, right? He wasn't really a communist, right? But he wasn't party line, right? And so Trumbo was one of the arrested Hollywood 10 who were blacklisted, not allowed to make films for years. And then he did continue to secretly make films, but he was famous for making Roman Holiday,
What is the Hollywood
Exodus,
10?
Spartacus. Hollywood 10, as I said, were the Congress blacklisted after refusing to answer questions about their alleged involvement with the Communist Party. Now, most of these guys weren't communists, but they were sympathetic and had friends who were socialist Democrats, Trotskyites, etc. And so you could say that if you were it was very common in the 1940s to make anti-war propaganda that was pro-world international socialism. It wasn't necessarily the same thing as communism, because they were saying, look, we see the Russians are trying to, it's a race, a space race. You know, they're racing for the international world socialist stage. So are the Republicans. The Republicans have created social services, social health care. We didn't live in a world absent of social services. So in the 40s and 50s, when they said, now, wait a second, your ties to the Communist Party, those are beyond socialist. Those are ties to a nationalist state competing with us, Russia, right? And that's when they started saying these actors and these writers are making propaganda that are not helpful to the war effort. They're saying, hey, war's bad and that we need to work together, right? And so then they said, we need to be in control of Hollywood. And so two things happened. One, the Hollywood 10 was nonsense. They weren't communists, right? And they ignored the real communists. And they laughed at the ones that they caught, like Lucille Ball. Turns out she was having, like, I Love Lucy with Desi Arnaz. She had tons of communists that she had meeting in her homes all the time. And her grandfather was a registered communist. And it goes back to a non-Russo communist ideal that she had. But most of the Hollywood 10 were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And this meant that, hey, be careful, communists. Look at those innocent scapegoats over there. Be careful. Don't stick your head up. And so the scare of the Hollywood 10 also made it easier for communists and socialists to go into the woodwork and to hide themselves because they knew that they couldn't be safe, right? And even to say, we're going to make all-American films, which had socialist propaganda in them, right? I Led Three Lives, talking about communism as a pro-American thing, really endorsed a lot of socialist messages. There's a lot of shows in the 50s and 60s which were kind of on the social. Anyway, the reason I brought it up was because Trumbo, who had made Spartacus, right, with Stanley Kubrick, amongst other things, he ended up making a film that we talked about yesterday for a minute called Executive Action. Hold on, I kind of wanted to play the trailer for it with sound. It's probably worth it.
At this point in time, can you believe that Lee Harvey Oswald killed President John F. Kennedy by himself? Don't make your decision until you see Executive Action, possibly the most controversial motion picture of our time. Start the target. A film that nobody would make until now.
Never before in American history has one family held such an enormous concentration of political power.
It's really interesting how they, weren't allowed to make movies, were secretly making movies under other names, and then boom, Trumbo makes a movie about the Kennedy assassination with Burt Lancaster as Herbert Walker Bush. And the CIA are saying, we have to be careful because the potential for a Kennedy dynasty, that is to say, there's enough Kennedys to go around for 20 years, is too dangerous to the WASPs in charge. And so we need to replace them with some other alternative to the Kennedy dynasty, which leads to essentially the Bush dynasty. And that this movie's made in 1973, before Herbert Walker Bush was
That's 4 years after, or how many years after the assassination?
62 is the assassination, right? Of is it 63? I'm sorry, 62, right? JFK 62. It's like November 22nd, 62, or is it 63? November 22nd, 63. Sorry, 63, and then November 22nd. That's why the two part. So 1963. So 10 years later, 73 is when Trumbo releases this film. But it's also like 10 years before Bush is president, or 12 years before Bush is president. So it's during the collapse of the Nixon administration into the Carter administration when things were changing a lot, right? but also the collapse of the Nixon administration into the Carter administration is what allowed for George Bush Sr. to take over the United States in a lot of ways, because the disenfranchisement of the United States military left a lot of opportunity for the CIA and for any agency that they were working with. And they had so much experience because they'd been in the OSS, they were the OSS, they ran all of the overseas services, but they also, since the Bay of Pigs, had been so good at running businesses and convenient shell companies that they didn't need to have the United States government anymore for a lot of those things. And it basically usurped the banana republics, because they were the banana republics, right? These were the same guys who ran the banana republics. And so through that, they took over. And I think that's kind of the interesting thing about this movie is that, it was critically panned at the time. No one was supposed to see the movie. It's really crazy. A Burt Lancaster film by Trumbo was panned. It's hard to even imagine that in today's history. But it was amazingly, this is where the idea of conspiracy theories and how crazy conspiracy it would be that people would have acted to take out the president, and showing you how they would go about it, where you're training guys to be able to hit moving targets, having a fall guy, having an actor go around town pretending to be Lee Harvey Oswald, acting belligerent so that people could place him. Yeah, I saw him there, and all of the information from this is before FOIA, so this is like Warren Commission stuff, that's showing how you would weaken the Secret Service around a president, right? And I thought it was really interesting how relevant it was to this particular assassination attempt, the Trump assassination attempt.
Well, I'm sure also here these factors presented can then be interpreted in both ways, both in terms of it is a stage play and also in terms of, oh, how could you really do it? I guess that is subject to, individual interpretation.
I think it's funny how people say that. Like, so for instance, one of the points was that of the 18 witnesses involved with the Kennedy assassination, they all died within 3 years or something to that effect. It was, hold on, let me see if I can find the actual quote, because I read it yesterday, but it seems like something that you would enjoy quite a bit.
And just before I forget it, because it started with communism, and whenever that idea comes up, I always think it's so amazing to contemplate, because I spoke about this with David Jung Jr. What do you think about the idea that whatever it is exactly, but that the ideals, let's say, or movement brought forth by whatever we could discern as a historical prophet Muhammad actually is the real foundation for a social welfare state, which at least in Europe is, heavily propagated, I guess, and propped up.
Well,
so in terms of social welfare states, socialism,
let's pop into the sweet one.
Mohammedan idea. Please go on.
Yeah, I think we should talk about the sweet one. I think I would differentiate the persona of Muhammad from the idea of the sweet one. But I just want to say here, this is what I thought was interesting. In the 3 years after the murder of President Kennedy and Lee Harvey Oswald, 18 material witnesses died, 6 by gunfire, 3 in motor accidents, 2 by suicide, 1 from a cut throat, 1 from a karate chop to the neck, 3 from heart attacks, and 2 from natural causes. Right? And then, so an actuary engaged by the London Sunday Times concluded on November 22nd, 1963, the odds against these witnesses being dead by February 1967 were 100,000 trillion to 1. Right? So it seems to me pretty reasonable to say, hey, you've got guys that are trained and groomed and filtered out to be good at keeping secrets, happy to do it for $100,000 and wired to their Swiss bank account, and then easily erased from society instead, right? You just kill them with a karate chop to the neck, apparently. It's cocaine. It's the CIA. It's the 60s.
Yes. Nothing to see here. So here, this is just one popular channel. They also go along with the idea of, I'm just saying that it's real, yeah? Just pointing it out, because otherwise sometimes they can do some interesting stuff. But what I really want to show, and luckily here we don't need audio for this, so here we go. Just check this. I have never had any long gun training in my life. I own an AR-15. Last time I shot it one time my whole life. It was 6 years ago. That's until Saturday when I recreated the events in Savoy, Texas. Recreated what happened in Butler. I was lying prone on a sloped roof at 130 yards at 6:30 at night. and I knew that he had a scope. I didn't know what kind, red dot or magnified. So I shot 8 rounds from both. You know what the result was? 15 out of 16 kill shots. And the one I have missed would have hit the president's ear. That's a 94% success rate. And this is apparently Representative Fallon. And of course, in his logic, so his many are better shot than me. And now, of course, he says, it's a miracle. It is a miracle. And I'm just, well, you know, anyone.
Well,
please
thank God,
believe
thank
what
God
you
he
will.
was thank God the alleged assassin, attempted assassin, was like, you know, an incompetent incel, internet junkie, you know, with no, I mean, we've done a really good job at, I mean, people talk about how America's done a good job at creating the perfect storm for school shooters and for crazy, but
Although what has to
really,
be, yes,
we've done a better job at turning people into couch potatoes that are incompetent, that can't feed themselves, let alone clean a weapon and use it and aim it properly. I mean, the idea, this kid failed his gun class, right? That's the official thing. He couldn't get into the rifle class in high school. I mean, so that's not the way America was supposed to be.
reminds me of how someone didn't finish their airplane certificate or something like this. No?
Well, he didn't get the landing down. Oh, Sky Pilot. Sorry.
The landing. They missed the landing. Yeah.
Oh, Sky Pilot. Anyway, rest in peace. I think that most of the people in America should be trained to use guns. Like, realistically, we shouldn't have teachers that teach you socialism or right-wing conservative ideology. We should have guns and books and internet, you know, facilities and instruments to help regiment the community so they can self-learn. And a major part of that is the rifle club. The rifle club is pretty much the only reason we have social education. Originally, the United States was like, we need to train militias, and those militias should probably be smart. It all comes from that. And so for this situation to happen where nobody knows how to use a gun, including the guy who's trying to use it, it's pretty un-American. That's all I have to say about it.
Or we can just leave it at that for now. So next interesting thing, because I remember we, even briefly in Austria, there's military conscript service, and maybe in total with this rifle they give you, which is, I mean, I'm really not into guns and of course not into violence or anything at all. But I have to say this gun was pretty nice, was like stable. It's called STG 77. Here also you can tell, like, you use 50-year-old weapons in the Austrian military, right? And laying down, even I'm now thinking of it. Okay, it was not sloped, but laying down, and I maybe shot 30 rounds in total. I think I also was pretty good in terms of hitting it. Yeah, that's the weapon, yeah. I think it's also featured in Counter-Strike in some variants.
Which is a good
anyhow, so even now that I'm thinking of, even the first few times I shot, okay, but lying down, I think I had pretty good accuracy. So yeah, again, whoever wants to believe that, you know, missing the shot can believe that. So what we're going to go on with now, because last time we talked about the missing Joe Rogan episodes, this and that. So I'll just bring these up briefly, right? So Joe Rogan is first. This is actually the real thing to watch. Kindly, everyone, and also you, if you haven't seen it yet. It's a presentation by Matthew Norton. What's so highly interesting here is that he shows the potential background financial connections, and also this very interesting, strange connection with MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, whereas you can see that Joe Rogan consistently had ads for many years, aside from the fact, Andreas, as you showed last time, he's already been on Radio News or whatever. I mean, what a generic name for a show, Radio Newsweek or whatever you said. And then he was in this X Factor or Scare Factor or whatever. So obviously he's a trained actor. But then here always.
And what an unfortunate name for the MAPS Association, right? I mean, it seemed like a great name at first until it was like immediately
until there were new.
God hates flags and maps.
That's what it seems like, and gates and windows. No, what's very curious here is that in the episode when then I believe it was the brother of McKenna or someone who's also only 1 degree removed from this association, on that day, and it's even quoted here in that video, Joe Rogan says, "Oh no, just start the intro. There is no ads today," and then he's like, "It's brought to you by the universe," you know. Yeah, if you want to believe that. So it's very interesting because, Joe Rogan is always like, what's his quote? You ever smoke DMT? Which, generally speaking, I wouldn't even say such a bad question, but it's always how do you contextualize it? You potentially encourage millions of people that have no clue about themselves, where they are. I mean, he's, not to insult anyone, but he's, especially on top of that, he's mainly broadcasting to Americans. But I mean, so obviously, at least irresponsible, to say the least. And there is other things. So we have here one channel I recently came to enjoy quite some because it's doing logical analyses, is Mindshock. Also apparently heavily shadow banned, because how do you get this ratio? Less like on your channel. He's always only going after logical fallacies, basically. So he's always calling out both sides or any sides and just going through, is there appeal to authority, appeal to consensus, false dichotomy, and whatever else. So that's an interesting thing, just like I showed earlier with the behavioral panel. Of course, then you can decide whether this guy doing Mindshock is doing this properly or not. But it's just, again, interesting to look at topics and ideas purely from a perspective in terms of a certain angle of analysis, again, without other presumptions or something. So instead of going by behavior, or that may also be interesting, or body language, he goes by logical fallacies, basically, and then puts up these counters and so on. Then there's even like this idea, what happened with Matthew North. So just to, people can check this out, because Matthew North, apparently the guy who did this analysis, died only 2 years later, and he was apparently shot in his own car. And again, I have a bad joke about this, but I mean, look at this guy. He's white even, so how do you get easily shot in your own car in the US if you look like this guy? I don't see how. And then this is an older video, really interesting, by Brian Stavely, who's done a lot, Dose of Reality has done a lot on Mandela effects, really interesting also on 9/11, no plane theory and other things. And he has this very nice playlist, Agents Against Humanity. People can agree or disagree, but it's very interesting because, at least in this example, from what I remember, he's showing clear examples where basically the position is flipped. Or here, nice quote, I would lie to my own mother. Yeah, everyone, just, if you're really interested in this, please check it out, maybe to get a better grip on what those guys are actually up to. So that's for Joe Rogan. You want to comment on anything, or then
I was just thinking. I was thinking about, like, what's the original Fear Factor show? Because there was like a '50s show with Jack Benny, and they would say there's like mice. There's mice in this box would be, or there's like hair rats, essentially. Like, it would be like you'd put your hand in the box to be afraid, and then you'd find out it wasn't really a rat. It was like a hair rat. It was something that's called that or something, but it's like a computer mouse instead of an actual mouse. Something would be there that would be not what you expect, so you'd be afraid. And that was kind of the show that Fear Factor was based on originally, and they took it to like a further level. It was also created by the people who made Survivor, and Survivor's based on kibbutz social hierarchies, and how people get voted off the island is very much how people are treated in kibbutz. Right?
Oh, really?
So, yeah, that's what it's really about. So I find it interesting, Joe Rogan's associations with those things, and the fact that he gets to have a show that on one hand people might say, oh, Fear Factor, that's just like cheesy basic cable, but on the other hand, that's like the biggest audience reach. So he hit the most people that way, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people. And syndication, Fear Factor is shown in South America, Eastern Europe, all over the world. And so he has seen quite a bit, and he's in the process of
product
AI
placement.
He's AI doing dubs of his videos, and so that's a big thing because English is only like a tenth of the world. That's correct. So he's working on broader communication of the content he's already created, which is a little bit less contemporaneous. He's done a pretty good job of that. So I don't know. I also know that he had to make some deals, like he did the Spotify thing so he could get to center stage, and he in that had to make compromises on what he could talk about. But I also know that deal's over now, and he started releasing a lot of episodes that had been taken down. And in fact, all of the episodes that were taken down are now their own playlists that are going up. So, I don't know, open-minded.
No, of course, and just saying and just pointing out this Matthew North story because these are interesting background analyses
Yeah, for sure.
financially. And then if you just look at it logically, I mean, I'm very sorry. I think there was like debate between him and Eddie Bravo or something. And again, not talking about specific models of anything, but really you can tell like Joe is grasping, you know. He's getting angry, he's grasping, he's not happy when certain things are being brought up for whatever reason. And it's all fine. And I'm not blaming or accusing anyone of anything. I'm just pointing these things out to consider, unfortunately, usually especially those on very big stages, for many, many different reasons, have to
Gee, Rap,
compromise.
what a crazy... I don't know what you're saying. That doesn't make
crazy
any sense to me
conspiracy
whatsoever.
theory, right?
Yeah.
That someone would have
By
to
the
adapt
way,
to the mainstream to get exposure, right?
Drink
But here,
Pepsi.
but just to bring the other side of this, because he's apparently here, as you can see here, he's, unless this is an AI video, but I don't think so, Joe Rogan is apparently questioning whether this Joe Biden is real. So that he also brings that kind of idea, which I find is curious, let's say. And
yeah, he talks about he brings up all the things, and I think that whenever he plays, usually his role is to try to play dumb, which he's not as good at anymore. I've noticed he used to be way better at this, but now he'll just he is dumb, but he used to play dumb. He used to just act like he didn't know what the conversation was about, get the other person to talk, right? And that way, and in certain circumstances, you don't just play dumb, you contradict somebody because you know that they're really good at and like to effectively argue. So you say, wait, but isn't this the case? And then someone will say,
that's
of course
all fine.
not.
But if he's obviously making then statements which are obvious logical fallacies or just besides the point, then it just makes him look bad, But
unless you're doing it with a crew, because if you have a co-host and you're saying something stupid so that they're saying the correct truth, then really what you're doing is you're helping. Because really the only point, the ego is destroyed in the process of creating the narrative that you're imprinting on the audience, and the audience is then designed to take your sound bites and sound clips and communicate with them or in parrot those concepts, right, at the water coolers. So for him, it's more that you're creating a sophist dialogue, and it might be easier if your co-host isn't as good as you. It might be easier to play the dummy, right? And I think he does that a lot because he knows so much more about the things he's talking about than he can talk about. So he just says, oh, really? Or that doesn't make sense. And then the person's like, here's why. Especially with Eddie Bravo, because they're really good friends. And Eddie Bravo is a fighter. And so he knows the best, that's the way he knows him, is through fighting. So what you do is you disagree with him, and then he'll verbally fight. And it's beautiful, right? If you love fighting, then you should think that what Eddie Bravo, how he moves and speaks, is beautiful in a sense. And I think, not everyone feels that way, but if you like Eddie Bravo and Joe Rogan is like that, I think that's how that works.
Yeah, there's, how should I say?
So this is the part where Raph, you should be like, no, screw you, Andreas. This is, that's the. Then we start fighting.
The only thing now, to start fighting. The only thing I heard, and I'm not sure if it's true because I'm not really watching Joe Rogan at all, to be honest. But it's really. Previously Eddie was more, let's say, free to talk about things he's interested in, and anybody who's seen him anywhere knows what that is. And now it seems, or I heard that now they only talk about MMA for 3 hours. So kind of it's clear that Joe kind of told Andy, don't talk about this and that topic because of whatever reason. But this only makes it ever more curious because why should Spotify or whoever, for example, care about the effing shape of the earth and not let, if it's so insane and crazy, and some people anyhow say Eddie Bravo is a bad example to talk about earth shape or ideas or whatever. I don't know. Anyhow, it's curious.
I think more people talking about things is generally good. Just having people, I'm under the, those are what's a very American thing about me. Like there's some things I notice are very American. I think that people should be, I think opinions should be heard, not just free to be shared, but should be distributed. I think even the stupidest of ideas should be distributed so that unless they're harmful, unless they're calling for direct violence, right? Specifically, that level of harm. Unless there's that and it's like breaking the law, then I think that stupidity should be not just free to share, but should be distributed so that we can analyze it. And what agrees with me? The United States fucking Constitution. So it's like, I don't know. It feels like that we're supposed to have stupid opinions.
I was about to say by Masons for Masons, but all right.
Yeah. But it's like, okay, but that's the thing, is it's designed. It is designed to protect horrible things, and that's almost the test of it. Like, can you have horrible things that are protected in society that aren't hurting people enough? So, like, where's the limit on that, so that you can actually hear how these things will affect people and understand the consequences of them? Because if like a grown adult makes any decision as an American, like, people miss this point about the conservatives. Like, a conservative value should be that an adult can become gay, transgender, anything that they want to be, because they have the freedom to do drugs, they have the freedom to shoot guns, they have the freedom to eat rats. You know what I mean? Like America. But we take that away because we're saying, oh, it's harmful what they're doing to kids. Well, really what you do is you just protect children and allow adults to have their freedom. I don't know. Sell out to the rulers. Yes, drink Pepsi. Agreed. I'm trying really hard, but like, it's not working. Like, they see right through it, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I have to go back to acting school or whatever that is. So I just showed this thing where Joe Rogan apparently talks about fake Joe Biden or whatever, and I don't know, I haven't analyzed the video, but then I somehow found this. This is the other guy, as I said, he made his money by most likely MLM pyramid structure of insurance selling, and now he's pretending to be a big shot on YouTube. This valuetainment guy, from what I understand, but regardless, he's bringing up some interesting ideas, and apparently here it's just a short video by apparently a former CIA employee who's just showing ultra realistic masks, and I guess that already was some years ago. So yeah, we talked about this before, but just to show that it is certainly not impossible, and they even mentioned that it'd be possible to brief the president or whatever in a continued, long conversation, and even be close to someone and not be able to recognize that, you're not who you say you are.
So the word shill also, I feel like we should like think about, right? Because you could think of a shill as like an astroturf, but really, like, a shill to me is kind of like a popularist. So you can think of, like, Einstein is a great example of a shill, and he shilled information that he didn't create, that he wasn't really responsible for. He was wrong about half the time, right? But he was around enough actual information that he was able to get a conversation going. And I think there is benefit to the discussion of physics and relativity and light and Lemaire and everything else. So even though he's a shill, through his shilling, people found out information, right? Shill comes from Shillaber, which is it's a carnival worker who pretended to be a member of the audience, right? Can I have a hand from the crowd? A hand from the crowd. Yes, you, the Shillaber in the front row. Yes.
I see.
We're going to hypnotize you with this watch. And then you just pretend that it works, right? But that also, a Shillaber could help if you have a dozen other people get hypnotized. Because if it only, some people are really susceptible. A lot of people are. So if you have a Shillaber that walks people through it and acts like he's hypnotized, yeah, it's entertaining for the crowd and it shows you how it works, but other people will often get hypnotized too because of a Shillaber.
So just because you brought up Einstein, take a look at this.
Über die absolut groß die
speziellen Relativitätstheorie. And so about the absolute size of the special theory of relativity, a documentation of a thought experiment over 95 years of criticism from 1908 to 2003, with a total of 3,789 works. And then there's some extra stuff. So what's interesting here is this is basically a huge book, as from what I understand, it's basically criticism of the theory of relativity. I'm not sure if this exists or the special relativity, in English as well. But it's definitely, I mean, I'd encourage everyone to check it out. What I found curious is that here they said any payments and royalties go to Amnesty. I'm not sure if that's the best choice anymore, but okay. But anyhow, this is freely available on the link you see above. I'm sure you can easily translate it through whatever software, and it may well be that quite a few of these were originally also in English. I'm not claiming I've read through it, but I know that this is also a relevant topic, you know, just as you said, how much was correct or not. So anyone who's into deep criticism of Einstein can take a look at this document.
Yeah, I mean, like, criticizing Einstein is like criticizing Neil deGrasse Tyson. It's just that Neil deGrasse Tyson, it's people don't get it because at the time celebrities seem more important than they do, because I think it really does still work this way. Like Huokta Girl or whatever, there's only a limited amount of media she puts out, and so if you carefully select the media you put, you don't just stream every day like some idiot like me, you know, then you can have a easier
You
have
saw
an
it.
easier time.
You haven't seen the picture. I think Eddie posted it in Synchronous. Is full of Kabbalah coding.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Like if you specifically choreograph and catalog, you have a curated social media catalog, and you know, imagine back then when you have just a photo in a magazine once a month, you know, across the country. Einstein looks way smarter that way, and Neil deGrasse Tyson would look that way in the 30s. You know, like they could, because if you're like, wow, this guy in these
right.
photos.
So basically,
with
you're
these
saying
people-
that the more you hear them, the more you can see maybe they are not the perfect geniuses. They can make themselves out to be from a picture or a 1-minute clip.
better to be thought the fool, better to be thought the silent fool than to open one's mouth and leave no doubt.
Yes, good point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Neil deGrasse Tyson. But most of the media today is like that, where we've seen so much of a person that there's a humanizing quality that didn't exist in the past. Not quite. Not in social elite.
So I'm not exactly sure why this video has the first primary translation or captions in Russian.
Oh God, the dog pack guy. Yeah.
Kind of sympathetic.
So I'm just like gonna start off like, because I have a harder opinion. I don't care about Joe Rogan, but MrBeast, bro, Jimmy's innocent, and like this whole thing with this like crackhead, schizo, Adderall junkie dog pack 404. My God, what is this kid like? Are you kidding me? What blows my mind is that there's enough other like vapid YouTube whores that are posting these. Look along the side there of all these videos from other people that are getting grifts. They're like, look, MrBeast is done. MrBeast, it's over. MrBeast, it's just like, okay, get over yourselves. None of these things are true. Like, it's completely ridiculous. And by the way, this is not a game show. There was never a circumstance where MrBeast said he was running a game show on television. This guy is crazy if he thinks that MrBeast's show has anything to do with American game show law. All he's doing is running a social entertainment show where people are signing contracts saying that, like, hey, we're going in to do an entertainment piece. And the other thing is, this is aimed, I think, at parents, because kids already don't, like, kids are not stupid. This is for stupid people, you know, grown-ups, right, who don't know MrBeast and don't know what's really going on.
That's an interesting perspective. I'll just leave it right there. So there's another video referencing this.
And well, wait, was there anything that
yes.
you wanted to point out from the dog pack guy? Like, was there something that you thought was like worth that you thought was interesting?
Well, I mean, I don't, of course, know any background things, this and that, or whatever is really going on. For me, I have to say, unfortunately, I, you know, by default, would give less credibility to anyone of, you know, with that massive impact. Even just as we mentioned earlier, the bigger the stage gets, the more you necessarily have to compromise in one way or another.
I think there's a reason why you find a poor single mom kid who's got Crohn's disease, and you know, you compromise his friends, right? Like, you make sure that you control and handle him as much as possible, and to at this point find that he has a larger demographic than there is a population in the United States. He's actually got like 300 million subscribers, and it's growing. That's actually something that they can't anticipate the control for. And right now he's just a YouTuber, But even as a YouTuber, he's about to become much bigger than that because people could just go MrBeast, and MrBeast is bigger than YouTube itself at that point. And YouTube is in an antitrust monopoly suit now with Rumble and X. I think we're probably going to talk about later. So there's reasons why they would want to take him down a notch and make him real. Like, it's how a shepherd breaks the knee of a wandering sheep so that it sticks close to the flock from now on. That's what they're trying to do to MrBeast. However, in this video, I've seen maybe two things which I can see MrBeast will definitely improve upon in the future. Like, they're saying, okay, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, he ran some telethon calls and was like, okay, we're going to give away prizes that we said we're going to give away for the last 20 minutes. We're only going to give them away in this minute right now. So if that were, a game show, that would be illegal. And it's not a game show. But since MrBeast tries to do things fairly, I would imagine he's going to try to do things more fairly in the future. You just have to remember, this is a freaking kid. He was like 18, 19, now he's 26. And so at 26, he's building this still. It's not perfect yet, but he's hired a lot of people to do it right. And I don't know, I would just also look at Greenville, look at what he's done for a town that was basically like single moms and drug addicts and party town. It was the biggest party town in the United States. And so he's turned it into a place where there's actually sustainable work for families and community, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I don't want you to like not talk about these things. We should go deep into MrBeast. If there's anything I'm missing here, let me know.
No, I'm just I just watched a few of these videos, and again, aside from my default stance of being, how should I say, skeptical or critical, it just seems there is some misrepresentations, and what this guy is going off on, I can't say what pharmaceuticals he's using or not. It's basically,
yeah, that's fine if he's on Adderall. I'm sorry.
It's basically just who isn't today in the US, I don't know. But the main point one of the main points main point he makes is that basically there is little culture in terms of how to say, accepting faults or even making a minor mistake like this. Even it's a stupid example with the $1 island or something, but it was $30, and then you try to fix it back to make it look like it, and instead of just
I think
saying,
that's also, even that was like,
that's
not even true. So like the thing is, there are tons of lands that are there. First off, every day new islands form and other islands disappear. We don't have a set number of islands in Polynesia, right? And so what they'll do is they'll say, hey, if somebody's willing to take over this island and use it, then we'll sell it for $1 to whoever, the same way that someone could buy acreage in Alaska for $1 in the 30s, right? There are situations where boats are benefited by having ports, and so by selling an island to, usually a corporation would buy an island, right? And so then they set up some sort of a place there. So, I mean, there are some things where it's like, oh man, he used CGI in the opening of the video. He faked his video. You're like, really? You're going to say that because his editor used CGI to make it look like a car went into a grinder at the beginning of the thumbnail, that the rest of the video is fake? But like, also, isn't everything fake? Like, who believes in truth? What's going on that you think that do you think these kids are still stupid? That's crazy. It's so disrespectful. They think these kids are stupid. They think these kids are the same as grown-ups from the last generation, and they're not. These kids know what's going on. They know what's truth. They know most things aren't truth. They know that you can live without truth. They've seen you do it, So it blows my mind that people think that this is somehow to protect the kids when really they're just trying to, they just want to look the coattails of this. It's really,
I mean, yeah, the view counts definitely are interesting. I'm not gonna lie. Also about these videos, I mean, anyhow, anything you just
okay. Let's even put that down. So like, let's talk about blacklisting somebody. Why has this video got 11.2 million views on YouTube instead of on Rumble or on X? Why, right? Why isn't this video taken down by YouTube? Clearly, YouTube wants this video up.
I don't know.
There was a cease and desist. Hasn't been taken down. Google #1 boy. He put a cease and desist out with his legal team. Why isn't it down? Google wants it up.
Yeah, and then the question is, what is the motivation of Google? Maybe like you said, make sure no single player goes too strong or accumulates too much of
Bro,
whatever.
I mean, when they were, let's put it this way, like, what was the way that this isn't the first time they tried to take down MrBeast. Like, what was the first way they're trying to take him down? he's curing blindness. He's saving Africans against the will of the state. Right? They started with the things that really offended them. You know, he's getting into our territory. You know, these are our people. These are our exploited lives that we are forcing to suffer and endure sustainably. And he's come in here and give them water. And everyone's like, what? What's the problem with that? Because most people don't understand how important it is to the elite to keep water from their people. Right? So now they're like, oh, well, you know what he's doing? He's coming after your kids. Oh! America.
Well, like I said, I can't say. I just find it interesting that this is coming up now.
Shills for MrBeast. All right, drink Pepsi.
Yeah, I can't decide on it. But yeah, like I said, my default position is to be very critical and skeptical.
Okay, well, let's continue with that then for one more second, because I agree with you there. And Kent Wood says, I don't buy into altruism for the sake of altruism. I'm very cynical at this point. Hell yeah, bro. Hell yeah. I'm not saying he's doing it just because he's the best person ever. I mean, I'm surprised at how if you take everything away from a person and you put them into the most impoverished state and you take away their father, you'd be surprised how good and generous a person might become. Like, don't get me wrong. Jimmy seems like a pretty generous person, like, but I think that might have also been something you learn as a survival mechanism, that if you empty your cup, it gets filled. If you give to others, it shares. And it's made him super famous. So out of a fulfilling goal of becoming famous, he's found helping other people, including helping people in Africa. Like, he's got the Beast Philanthropy channel is the one that you should watch. MrBeast Philanthropy is a whole other channel, and they build houses in South America and Africa. They do all these things for people, right? And it's changing the world rapidly, right? And they're working with churches. They're working with everybody that they can, but they have their own nonprofit organization, and that's making him more famous and is making him more money. And there's no question that is a self-serving, selfish thing. That's great. Good. But how cool is that? Because other celebrities on YouTube are not doing that. Other celebrities are getting homeless people to drown themselves. Other celebrities are doing drugs. Other celebrities are crashing cars.
Sure.
I mean, it's like...
So let me just take away one positive, regardless of what the real situation with this guy is or whatever happens or not. The good thing, of course, maybe or should be that, again, whatever is actually happening, maybe inspiring individuals to just help others, you know, in a basic sense. Aside from that, what's also pretty clear, but of course you would also have to conform to that if you want to get big on YouTube, is of course massive exploitation of all kinds of psychological tricks and nudging and so on.
Of course, yeah.
To get
he has
where you
his
want
own
to get.
NLP. Yeah. We took 1,000 people and spoke at this speed when we told everyone what we did. That's, yeah, there's a way that they do it. But Beast Philanthropy 501c isn't just giving people stuff. It's building infrastructure, and it's helping in crazy ways that's really impressive. I mean, businesses are being built, and sustainable businesses. Then,
well, that
I mean,
would be interesting to talk to an insider and basically see, like, what is the real impact, what is the long-term impact, what is actually happening. But yeah, that should be, and I think that's the whole point.
That's what they're doing also. So a lot of the time they're targeting people that already so they target people that are already building nonprofits in these countries, and then they help facilitate that already, like, you've proven yourself to have a thing. They give you a truck. You know, there's a woman whose truck exploded, and they gave her a new truck, right? And so now all of a sudden she's able to get back and forth from the orphanage, etc. And these little things that they do, they are things that they're being given, but they're replacing. I mean, you got to look at how complicated it is to live in some places without infrastructure. I think we need to bring back on Ibiza to talk about Nigeria, because, you know, Scott here is telling them, like, teach them how to fish, like, don't give them stuff. Well, you know, let me tell you how you teach someone to fish. Like, you need a fishing rod. You know what I mean? You know, like, it's not, you can't, you can maybe, like, learn like a bear, and they could probably get really good at it.
I would enlist in indigenous and do spearfish hunting, you know?
I'm pretty good at spearfishing. That's a Croatian thing. We like to tie it to our big toe. You tie the string to your toe, and then you throw the thing, and then you pull it up from the toe. It's pretty great.
All right, so we can go on to the favorite topic Earth shape. And I'll just go through this quickly. So once again, of course, I have to
I
show
think
a
that the
Sabine
Earth is actually
video.
shaped like Sabine. If you think about it, like it's got the curves.
Yeah. But also some, yeah, curved and flat at the same time. So maybe that's a solution. So yeah, here I just wanted to show this because this is a video she did recently. It's not about any particular topic, but it's so curious because here she basically says, as you can see, my dream died and now I'm here. What is toes? Is theory of everything.
Joe the Toe got really excited.
Oh.
He was like, we're talking toes now?
Oh, Toe Rogan. Oh, nice. So because here she's basically explaining how she's disappointed by academia and how it's, I'm not sure if she says it's corrupt, but like bureaucratic, whatever issues happening, this and that, researching things that don't actually matter just to get funding. And it's so funny to me that she can explain and know all of that, and that's why she left. But still, oftentimes she apparently, you know, appeals to authority and all of that, which she basically heavily criticizes, or the structure, which she heavily criticizes in this video herself. So again,
yeah,
I find
dude, I just can't wait for her end game. You
cognitive
know,
dissonance, sustainability of her is amazing to me. So yeah, I just wanted to show that because it's quite recent and it's also kind of cool, and she makes really good points there, which from what I understand are quite correct in terms of the grants and all of that. The paper production machines, students and postdocs are burned through, and some professors sell their books. I mean, even the little university I attended, one of the first things I heard from the lecturer was like, yeah, and to learn for this and this seminar, you need this book. Oh, and big surprise. She wrote it herself, and it's, you know, not exactly a cheap book, right?
well, that's the education system for you. She learned directly from the best. You know, that's how you do it.
Yeah. So and in this case, I'm not talking about her, but about one professor that I had, quote unquote. Right. So, but she's just basically explaining that, and yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Then we have more stuff. So there is, of course, there's so many different angles on this, but anyone who's interested in what's going on with this final experiment can check out some of the links that I put on the site. I'm not going to go through the detail. We talked about it a little bit, that it's all very strange, and maybe I had mentioned that by now even Captain Kirk and Neil deGrasse Tyson suddenly want to go to Antarctica to observe a sun or not, and
is
decide.
Kirk still alive? He's
yeah, William Shatner. Yes.
Shatner's. How is Shatner not dead?
That's how people are wondering, like, how they're gonna transport him there.
Born in 1931, bro.
Yeah,
like,
but I mean,
you know what I mean?
But didn't
like
he
Poland was still popping when he was born, you know?
He was still riding airships, probably. Yeah, it's amazing who else they're gonna bring along. But didn't William Shatner also just 2-3 years ago did this SpaceX flight thing or something? So what was that comment? Got more followers through what? Building up third world.
Instead of paying taxes to the war pigs.
Yeah, well, I wish that is true. I can't say. Okay, then here another logical analysis about NASA. Yeah, showing some interesting pictures, and oh, here, did you know what NASA means to deceive?
Did you know? Yeah, for sure.
Kind of funny. Then here, for some reason, I wanted to bring this very basic Wikipedia page on, because maybe because of that, right? Because of the 1959, and then we have the Antarctic Treaty also on in 1959, went into force in 1961. So that's interesting that these things
is an
kind of.
interesting year. It's the end of the McCarthy cold. Like, well, we have a Red Scare that basically we're not allowed to. We have a prohibition of trade, right? What's it called? We're not allowed to trade with the embargo. We have embargoes with socialist countries until 1959. And in 1959, that's when the Rockefellers open up trade between the East and the West.
All right. So this, and also I think, oh yeah, and because I wanted to show a video which is on this side, which is pretty amazing. Let's see if I find it. They have these very interesting images. Oh yeah, this. Now everyone please take a look at this. Lunar ascent by Apollo 17 ascent stage. So I guess this video was allegedly made on the moon itself or something. And I just found it so cool that it's on the Wikipedia page. So let's just watch it. It's like you hear some radio chatter in the background, basically. 39 proceeded. 3, 2, 1. Ignition. And some more radio chatter I can't decipher.
So real, you guys. So real.
That's pretty cool. But I'm kind of confused. I mean, if this was film, couldn't they digitize it in a much higher resolution? Does this have to be like 140p? I don't know. I'm not a digital media expert, but oh yeah, and this is maybe a cool graphic. I have no clue about this, but maybe this is kind of what you mentioned also. Let's see if there's something interesting here. Where are the years? Oh, 58. So here we can see it starts, and we have Antarctic Treaty 5961. Yeah, I can't say much about this. Oh, man in orbit, female in 2 men in orbit, 3 men in orbit, spacewalk, high orbit, lunar landing.
One of the things you can do if you go to NASA is you can actually go to their Apollo missions, and they have these simulations where you can watch them in real time. And if you click on the T,
all propellants now aboard the second stage, pressurized as we approach.
You can't hear it. Let me
No, I could hear it.
Again.
It worked. It worked.
You could?
Of the countdown.
I'm gonna overload it again then, because it's pretty funny. Okay.
All propellants now aboard the second stage, pressurized as we approach the 1 minute mark in the countdown. Mark T-minus 1 minute and counting. Now in the final minute of the countdown. At T-minus 45 seconds, Gene Cernan will make the final guidance alignment. This is the mark. T-minus 45, and Gene Cernan made that final guidance alignment. That's the last action taken by the crew aboard the space vehicle. Now approaching the half-minute mark. T-minus 33, T-minus 30 seconds, and continuing on now. Continuing on at T-minus 26-second mark, T-minus 25. We'll get a final guidance release at T-minus 17-second mark. T-minus 17, final guidance release. We'll expect engine.
I feel like this would really get you pumped. You know, you're watching this on TV.
9, 8, 7, ignition sequence started. All engines are started. We have ignition. 2, 1, 0. We have a liftoff.
Sueña,
Daylight here at Kennedy Space Center as the Saturn V is moving off the pad.
Come on, that's hot.
It has now cleared the tower.
That's hot. Fire!
Okay, babe, it's looking good here. Roll is complete. We are.
I think that's adorable. And you know, like once you saw that, you'd believe anything because it's like the best fireworks show ever. Like who burns that much gasoline? Come on.
Oh yeah.
It's like it's like Terminator 2.
It's pretty cool. So, okay, we have the Antarctic Treaty thing. There's not much to say about it except, I'm sure we mentioned before, how curious the world can't agree on anything, but they can perfectly agree on the fact that at least no civilians are supposed to F around anywhere over here.
Yeah.
Brings us back to the final experiment. Then here I won't play it, or you wouldn't hear the audio anyway, so I can just show a little bit of it. It's quite funny. I highly recommended new video from Conspiracy Music Guru, but also, to be fair, with a warning at the beginning, yeah, so anyone who's offended is not allowed to watch the video, yeah, restricted.
It's
Even
literally
with a nice
called Space Cunt, but yeah,
Star Wars intro. So yes, of course, has a certain bias, you may say, but that's why the warning is there up front.
Fabulous. I'm glad that Conspiracy Music Guru is back in full force with a new single.
Yeah, that's very nice. And then this is, let's see. Yeah, this is just one guy I randomly found and still have to make sense of it. I'm not sure if you've heard about this guy. Because it's like both interesting because one hand it would support the UFO narrative. On the other hand, it's like supposed he was a fraudster or something. I can't say, and I haven't looked into it deeply enough. I just found it as one of those cases. Oh, and there, maybe you have to read
Doing
more about
lectures
this.
on UFOs in Bakersfield, California. Don't know about him. The prosecution called Carl Sagan to testify that Planet Saturn could not support life. An experience later described by Sagan in his 1966 book, Intelligent Life in the Universe, using the pseudonym Henry Winkler for Schmidt. Schmidt insisted that the jury should be shown the film Edge of Tomorrow. Schmidt was convicted. I mean, but Saturn's got that crazy hexagonal pole, right? Like, if all the planets, that's Sure, why not?
Yeah, on the images we see.
That's
Then
not fair that they brought on Carl Sagan and then that was like a material witness. That's the joke.
that's a little bit strange. It's in itself. Here, was supposedly a former CIA agent or something talking about UFOs and so on. I have no idea as to his credibility. I just brought it up because it's one of the German creators that I know.
What was the name of that last guy? I want to get his name down so I can look him up later.
Reinhold O. Schmidt. And it's all in the link list.
Yeah. There's probably a documentary on this guy somewhere. We'll look into it.
So here I'm just bringing it up, talking about these things. Again, no idea as to credibility, but anyone who's into that, maybe something interesting to check out. Then also, right, this is also...
So he was sentenced to jail in 1963 and died in jail in 74. He was sentenced from a term of 1 to 10 years in prison, and he was in there for at least 11 years. So that's kind of interesting. Like, to arrest a guy for maybe 1 year sentencing to have him get 11 years. Anytime you have these, like, misjustices where something like that happens and someone's in jail forever and they just kind of get disappeared and they talked about something weird. So UFOs, probably like military crafts or something like that.
No, the connection here, which maybe is the forbidden one, especially for the US, that won every war they've ever engaged in, right? In official narrative. Here, this is interesting channel called Divergent. I actually found him a long time ago, but never knew the connection. Maybe I brought him up. He's talking about volcanoes, all kinds of things.
Bro, I'm sorry. I haven't moved on yet. I got to finish the Schmidt one.
No, this relates. This relates because
he
claimed
because
the guy says, yes, that's why.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
It's because he says, so he claimed 2 men left the object and escorted him inside it, wherein he witnessed a group of 4 men and 2 women speaking a language he described as High German.
Wow.
And that's why I'm bringing up this video with Divergent, because I think that, this relates to Reinhold Schmidt, even though it's a different spelling. But so you guys can also check out this video. He talks about it a little bit. Unresolved case, but apparently, I don't know, not encouraged to talk about.
Why do they call High German, but isn't High German like South? Isn't like High German's like Austria and like South Germany, right? Like it's not Scandinavian, right?
Well, it's not Scandinavian, but the
southern...
like
you'd think of Northern Germany as High German, but it's not, isn't it? Like High German language is commonly called High German.
Standard.
Varieties of South and Switzerland.
High German
Austria.
would be the variant that technically all Germans, Austrians, and maybe even Swiss Germans learn, and that would be the way that we could perfectly communicate with each other and can. So I'm not sure, for example, if there's any guy in Switzerland in the German-speaking region who cannot perfectly speak High German if they want to, and therefore perfectly communicate with a German or an Austrian. Okay, so this is just a video to check out. And then let's see, we already had this. We had the mask, we had the Joe, we got this. Okay, oops. And then we go on, if we haven't had enough conspiracies. So I think I actually brought this up once before, but somehow I stumbled across it again because it's just such a ridiculous case. So there was a, let's say, rising star in Viennese, Viennese politics. How important can that be? But, Austria also has its place. I don't want notifications. And what's curious, Standard is actually known to be a very pro-left-wing, let's say, paper. Some would even say radical, and some would even say encouraging hate speech in their comments. Everyone can make up their own mind. If you want to watch crazy comments in German, go to their forums. This is what they're known for. Also, the like and dislike ratio and arguments there can be very interesting, or how should I say, unnerving, depending on your perspective. So anyhow, they would not be prone to criticize someone on the left wing, but they do bring out that this Laura Rudas, who here you can see, born in 1981, at least for 6 years, she was the party secretary for the Socialist Party, here again, Socialist, of Austria. And the Socialist Party during that time may have been, also was in government, at least partially. And she was like a rising star in Vienna. And I think her husband, it should even say here, so she studied, right? And then she did some kind of Stanford University Sloan Fellows program, I think recommended by her husband or something, who already had some kind of connection or advertising agency. But still, I find it quite curious that very quickly then she started working for Palantir. I mean, anyone who knows Palantir, this is like if BlackRock got the money, they got the data, or how else to say. And yeah, I just find that highly suspicious that someone, and honestly, sorry, I have to say, she also, at least from what I saw from her, and I only saw her live in one discussion I even attended, and there was like a Green Party, a Socialist Party, which was her, and a Black Party, which is the Economy Party or Conservative Party contestants, and they all the three spoke, and it was so funny because it was a discussion about the European Union, and all the three of them, of course, were arguing for representative democracy and not for direct democracy, which I found, of course, I mean, it's like, how obvious can it be? Like, oh, please don't take away my job, right?
Yeah.
And what was funny is that out of the three of them, I was like, oh, this one woman talking, she seems really like edgy and stuff. Like she must be the Green Party one. That's what I thought. Yeah. And then I realized, no, it's her from the Red Party, like from the Socialists. And she seemed to have, I don't know how to say that, like a belligerent attitude or something. And I can't really tell, but also it doesn't seem to me like she would necessarily be the most, I don't know, intelligent or competent or something. What does she have to do with data mining after half a year studying at this MIT school or something? Yeah, so I find that highly suspicious. Let's see if there is something. So they just say, okay, Palantir works for NSA and so on. And also, of course, even though many people don't know too much about it, but there is, I think, even up to today, there is no military basis in Austria, but I think there is like a even halfway official, like CIA, how do you call it? Like radar absorption station or whatever, surveillance thing somewhere in Vienna and stuff like that, right? Aside from all the background connections, but it's not as if, they're not involved in Austria at all anymore. So I'm kind of prone to the hypothesis that through whatever way, they started connecting to each other, maybe before she did this university study, or whatever else information she may have had to be valuable to Palantir. Because usually, from what I understand, politicians then later on are rarely hired for their high competency, but quite often just simply for the relationships they have built or special access to information and other privileges that they may have enjoyed. So yeah, here she is. I think she moved on now, but still on her LinkedIn, it shows she's EVP, whatever EVP is, Executive Vice President at Palantir Technologies. Yeah, okay, and I don't have an account here, luckily, so not much more we need to know about this. Okay, we got all of that through.
I was gonna make a quick comment on, because earlier we were talking about the shape of the Earth and the shape of the universe. Someone said, "Oh man, the Germans talking about space globe." Well, space globe, that's like the thing, right? Because the idea of the globe, even, it's the pillars of Joachim and Boaz, and you have the Earth turned into a sphere, like the whole world into something that you could just get all the way around. It's like a psychic idea, and then the universe turned into a sphere, similarly, right? Into something that everything is infinitely connected, and you're walking between the two pillars, so it's like a portal between the macrocosm and the microcosm, right? That's where I think the metaphor comes from. But psychic metaphors can become realized dreams.
Well, with plenty of early education, they certainly can.
Right.
So yeah, we got the masks, and this is interesting because this is another guy who got interviewed by Joe Rogan and apparently wasn't very happy with it, or is claiming that certain topics are not being discussed. What I'm bringing up here is just this database which he has, which may be something interesting for research, because it shows, if it loads, all kinds of interesting connections between different entities. Oh, here we are. So let's see. Right, basically MK Ultra and Intel Community Database. So this may be something interesting for people to check out, to see all kinds of connections between different things. I haven't really gone deep into this yet, but this guy seems interesting and honest, of this Logos Media Group. He's been interviewed by Joe Rogan once or twice, I believe. And yeah, he's got this site with some interesting concepts and database.
Nice.
Then what else do we have? Okay, let's close all of these and go on over here. Okay, so this one I haven't checked out yet, but it's quite interesting. Polaris's Lucifer and Alan Parsons Project. This would again relate back to NASA as well. That may be something to check out, but I still have to watch this one. This, we know already, plenty of one-eye symbolism in the media. I was just like, oh, this is even an old video. Some might popped up. How this may have a history. Oh, and there
Remember
was
how
pink.
Austin Powers, they call the time tunnel project the Alan Parsons Project?
Time tunnel project? Why that?
Because then they're traveling in time in the second Austin Power through that time tunnel.
Okay, I didn't really watch that. I just know the $1 million, but
Yeah. No, there's like a lot of deep stuff in there actually. And the time tunnel was like a show in the 60s that was about traveling through time. The first episode, they go to the Titanic, all these different things. Then they go to the future, and there's photosynthetic, human, genetically modified gold people that live off sunlight in these like weird beehive cultures and everything like that. But they call the secret para-government, evil corporation that is like government financed and then also owns Starbucks. They have their secret time travel project. It's called the Alan Parsons Project.
curious. I mean, yeah. Yeah, time travel. Yeah. What to say? Okay, this one then. All right, and this is really fun. I mean, probably you already knew about this. Do you know who this guy is related to? I mean, if you just take a look, you'll already know, but I mean, this is a joke. It's really a joke. Look at his name.
Wow. Bernays Randolph.
And even here it says family, Bernays family,
wow,
just to
look
make
at that.
sure.
Look at that freaking picture.
We'll go there in a second.
Yeah.
So just he is let's see.
He's the grandson of Austrian-born nuclear engineer turned financial advisor and Muriel Lipchick of Brooklyn.
But also he's one of Randolph's paternal great-grand uncles was psychoanalysis pioneer Sigmund Freud. But the thing is that he is also related to Edward Bernays. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it says right after that, another uncle, right? Another paternal
here we are. Yes,
was Edward Bernays. Yeah.
and Edward Bernays. To anyone who hasn't known it, and still, if you allow me, I'll read the first paragraph because
total dreamboat, by the way.
Dreamboat?
I'm just kidding.
What does that mean?
I don't know. Either that he was like handsome or like lovable, which is sardonic.
So Edward Bernays' book on propaganda from supposedly in 1907 or something like this. Here someone comments, the historian and scientist Yuval Noah Harari talks about the means by which the great companies hack our brains. If you read the last paragraph of the book, you'll see that Edward Bernays talks about the same thing. That's cool. Actually, we'll go there in a second, but just the very first paragraph. So he starts with his book Propaganda with organizing chaos, where we had that before, order out of chaos. Although I like the quote you put on APM, Andreas, where you said, what was it? Go through the chaos and leave a wake of order, or leave order in your wake.
Wade through the chaos, leaving a path of order in your wake. Yeah.
Yes. 1 second. Oh yeah, here we are back. So here it says in Edward Bernays' Propaganda, the conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds are molded, our taste is formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. This is a logical result of the way in which our democratic society is organized. Vast numbers of human beings must cooperate in this manner if they are to live together as a smoothly functioning society. Our invisible governors are in many cases unaware of the identity of their fellow members in the inner cabinet. And then, just for the sake of it, let's check out what the last paragraph actually says. Here we are. Maybe, let's see. I can go to the side. The mechanics of propaganda. if the public becomes more intelligent in its commercial demands, commercial firms will meet the new standards. If it becomes wary of the old methods used to persuade it to accept a given idea or commodity, the leaders will present their appeals more intelligently. Well, I dearly hope for that, even for whatever new world order anyone wants to build. Propaganda will never die out. Intelligent men must realize that propaganda is the modern instrument by which they can fight for productive ends and help to bring, it literally says it here, order out of chaos. How amazing is that? And his whatever great nephew something
Can we
turns
get that
out to
photo? I
be
want to see that portrait.
the CEO of Netflix, and his
Yeah.
family is distinctive.
I
of
can't believe I
course,
didn't
and
know that
distinguished.
because I know
I
I now
also can't
recall.
believe that, honestly, but
I feel weird because that then means his son, who I went to Spring Hill Elementary School with, is also like the great grandnephew of Bernays and Freud, which is just like another level of weird to think about because he went to that same school. Can we get that photo of Isaac Bernays? Let's get a big old up of that. What an outfit. And then also just his lips, like it's just yeah, click it and then just go zoom it. You're gonna have to it's tiny, so you're gonna have to yeah. That's a face. Wow. Is it
yes.
crazy that I don't feel like okay, so earlier my friend Darth Call was telling me like he was in Los Angeles and he noticed that like where he was at in Los Angeles like everyone was speaking Spanish and I was like and he wasn't like upset about it. He was just like noticing that. It's like yeah, because like it's Mexico. You know, California was part of Mexico. And so I feel like is it weird that I feel the other way around? You know, that it's weird that people speak English in California? Like it seems weird to me how much people want there to be a monolithic language across the United States. And I feel like if, you know, Europe did that, it would be crazy, right? If Europe was like, you guys all have to speak French to get. I mean, de facto English has happened though. And I wonder like what do you think about that? Like this weirdness of this like Germanic Swahili that is English that's been created that we kind of are expected to know everywhere. It's like nobody's native language.
Kind of, yes. And I have to say, at least by now, I mean, it was funny because I've just been to the festival and camping with many Hungarians, but almost all of them for quite a few years actually emigrated to the UK, you know, to work there and stuff, or even still are living there. So of course they all have perfect English. Yeah, I mean, for better or worse, I guess, you know, hadn't they shattered the language before, this wouldn't be necessary. But I guess at least English is simple enough to be able to be picked up quite easily. And then at least we have some type of a common tongue, or at least a start, until we maybe get back to some language of the birds, which is half intonations and half telepathy, which probably would be more effective, and maybe, you know, facial expressions and so on. Yeah, for now, we'll make do with what we have, I guess. Can't hear you laughing, Andreas. Unmute yourself.
Fine. Whoever said inflatable Earth theory, you win today because I posted investigate inflatable Earth theory. Neurotic says right after you investigate shrinking Earth theory.
Nice. I also saw that comment. I liked it too. Okay, so now let's just go through a few more things. All right. Okay, there was we had the propaganda, and then this is something. So this is was a guest on Nachiketa's panel a few times. He's a very interesting guy. I believe he's originally Chinese, living in Europe, has some very interesting views, and maybe also something for you to check out. So one thing is saying that there is potentially some issues with the theory of DNA and how this is structured. Of course, we have to think.
I have to interject really quickly because
Yes.
Melissa, she just posted winning isn't everything. When everyone knows. Just in case anyone wasn't clear.
And then even apparently that there is no, let's say, clear isolations of vitamins or something. And yeah, just something interesting to check out. I'll have to investigate further, but of course,
So
it's always
is this being done? What exactly are they trying to say? Because obviously in the 20s and 30s, like the idea of the word vitamin was made up because they said, hey, we believe that theoretically there must be something about these foods that are in common that have nutrients, right? And it seems like lemons are causing this cure of scurvy, so we're going to call these vitamins. But vitamin is an ambiguous term. I think we know that. But what is it that they're saying? They're saying DNA doesn't exist? What does that mean? Like, what does he mean by that? Is he saying that what we're calling DNA is something else? What does he mean?
yes.
Like,
Oh,
yeah. And an amino acids like protein folds. So I just want to understand.
Yes. So I cannot give you the entirety of the argument. Let's see.
I just whenever I read something like this, I'm like, okay, this is why it's popular. Like, it could get a lot of traction because all you have to do is say,
don't worry.
all you have to do is be like, DNA's a hoax, or you have to just all you have to say is
no.
anything's a hoax, and then but nuance, it probably is a thing, you know.
Of course, that's not the thing, but it's basically about just as I showed earlier with the theory of relativity, just a different angle to investigate the models that we are given. That's all. Yeah. So, and the processes, because obviously, you know, DNA and the whole DNA testing and collecting. What did I read today? Someone, or even on, was it even on APM? BlackRock bought 23andMe or whatever it was. Wasn't it something like this? So someone bought like a huge database, and it's not the. I think it was literally BlackRock.
Who bought? I thought it was Ancestry or something. 23andMe. Isn't 23andMe still owned by Google?
No, it wasn't 23andMe. It was probably Ancestry. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Ancestry got bought by was Ancestry purchased by Black? It wasn't like Blackstone or something. Yeah, it's Blackstone, not BlackRock. Which I can only imagine is something like it, but it's technically here. I mean, here's Blackstone. Just so people, I've heard this before, and people keep mixing them up. And just this is what Blackstone is instead of BlackRock. It was founded in 1985 as a mergers and acquisitions firm by Peterson and Schwartzman, who had previously worked together at the Lehman Brothers. Lehman Brothers, as you know, is like historic. You know, it's like the historic investment bank trading. You know, that built the banks. So yeah, this is a merger and acquisition built by bankers, you know, but it's not Black, is it? Yeah. Partnership. Blackstone entered a 50-50 partnership with founders of BlackRock, Larry Fink, in 1987, 2 years after they started Blackstone. So that worked out really well for them. You know what I mean? Okay.
I bet. So the next thing, it's a brief, I guess, propaganda video or something. Can you bring it up? I posted in the private just because then we can listen to the audio for 30 seconds.
Oh, your audio's not
because
your audio's not pumping? Okay.
It's not. I think it's not here. Yeah. Oh, now it's not with you either. That's sad. Okay. Anyhow, people can check this out. It's like a Chinese. Now the audio didn't get through for some reason. I don't know. Before it worked.
Okay, hold on. Let's try that again. Let me see. Is it working now?
Yeah.
Our nation's first nuclear bomb containing thermomaterials explodes successfully.
This kind of blows my mind, like when someone's like, yeah, the bomb exploded successfully. Like, they're really proud of their science. They're showing all this crazy equipment that they use to like explode. Okay, yeah, you got it to explode.
Look, we can make a big boom.
Yeah, like, okay. It is a big boom. That's a marvelous boom. It's exactly what it is.
Of the successful From the time of the successful explosion of our first atomic bomb to the successful explosion of our first thermonuclear bomb, it took us only a little over 1 year. Such great leap forward progress proves that the Chinese people, equipped with Mao Zedong's thought, dare to take a road never before taken by their predecessors.
I find it hard to believe, but okay. Like, the idea that China could do this without all of the help basically possible from both the West and the East. Like, it had to have been Russia and America through. This is what it looks like, is Rockefeller said, hey, what happens if we give people too much? America. What happens if we give people too little? Russia. And then they kind of came up with this like middle ground thing, which is 90s China. Like eventually they get there where they have enough, right? They have all the sustainable infrastructure necessary that the United States provided, and they have all of the idea of social democratic sustainability and infrastructure from the Soviet Union. The idea plus are practical, and that is China today. So I mean, there's no way that they could have had. They weren't able to make steel. How are they going to make nuclear bombs on their own?
Well, that's the story. So I just thought it's a cool video and maybe fun, maybe to cut up or throw at some AI. It looks like pretty impressive.
Super
And
impressive.
now we can go to our favorite topic, potentially history. And this is something I had brought up before sideways, and I didn't realize like who they were exactly. I had mentioned to you this internal predictor of the USSR, which again is one of the most badass names I ever heard, if there ever was one. And this is apparently a guy with the name of, I'll tell you in a second, Pirigin or something like this. I'm looking it up right now because a friend, Piakin.
Yeah, duly noted. Post says no cameras were hurt during the filming of that event, which is like fair enough. How they doing that?
Yeah, so a guy called Piakin and some others are involved here. And what is really, really curious here, because somehow I was just like, I'm going to check it out again, because actually Nachiketa did a video on a book called The Master and the Margarita, which is like some, I don't
Amazing
know,
book.
psychological, spiritual.
Mikhail Bulgakov's book. He wrote it once, was arrested, put into the gulags, and then he had to write it again for the next 20 years on butcher paper and smuggle it out. And so it's the story of these atheists who are talking in the Soviet Union at a train station about progress and the world and man's destiny and all that. And then there's this other guy there who speaks really clean but kind of accented Russian, better than they can speak, in a suit, and he's just, oh, it's very interesting. And like, what? Oh, just how you're talking about man's destiny, the idea that you'd have, your own destiny. I mean, it's absurd, but it's interesting. Go on. And they're like, what do you mean by that? He's like, well, I mean, just imagine a man having his own destiny. Like, that would be crazy, right? Like, all right, like if you could be here, control your body, where you are and what's happening to it. Like, that's your control of your own destiny, right? So imagine, how can a man be in control of his own destiny when he can't even, like, the world's so old, he can't even stand in one space for 1,000 years. He can't control his, he'll be dead, in a tenth of that time, or maybe even less, right? So how is it that he thinks he can control his own destiny? And then the guy kind of starts to make it more and more clear that he believes in God, because then they're like atheists, so like, that's crazy. Like, well, no, God, I know him. I mean, like, that it's a cool idea though, like, to just completely deny his existence. I wish I had thought of that. I would have gotten in less of arguments with Dad that way. And then there's like, wait a second. And so all of a sudden you realize he's the devil. And so the devil is talking to these atheist Russians, and he's kind of telling them a lot of utilitarian things and kind of things about, like, it's really interesting from the perspective of, he's basically an atheist, but he's like an agnostic spiritualist. He's against the church, and he really is a socialist in a lot of ways, and a product of his time. But he's fully rejected because he's criticizing the state as a new religion as well, and saying there's always these egregores that exist, right? The Master and the Margarita is probably one of the greatest books of all time, and definitely from the Soviet Union.
So if I understand correctly, then this guy or whatever is associated with this group also, or at the very least they reference this group in particular, this group references this book in particular. That's kind of why it flared up again in my mind. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna research them a little bit again. And one of the last posts, I mean, they don't post too much here, is from 2010. So I want to say this is well before David Ewing Jr. published anything, and also in a way cross-confirms some of the things that he's talking about. And anyone who's interested in, how should I say, what the role of Quranic Islam is potentially on the world stage, I can highly recommend to read through this document. We went through it one time on Nachiketa's channel, and it basically says, so how should I'm seeing how we can summarize this. I'm not sure if I can summarize this quickly enough. basically it shows that there is an opposition, let's say, between Quranic Islam and those who are supporting the, as they say, biblical project. And what I like in the end, again, please kindly everyone really check this out. It's very interesting, and I can explain a few things. But also here it says that how can we resolve this? Because here it basically says either there will be a worldwide caliphate stemming from these ideas, or there will be, I don't know, some Western Satanism with usury or whatever, yeah. And then at the end they put an attempted resolution, which I find is quite interesting. So here it says, so the committed basis to prevent the above-mentioned multi-optional policy could be the acceptance that the sociological core of all revelations that were the source for all so-called Abrahamian religions is the idea that people themselves should create and live in prosperity on the earth of God under God's guidance. In this world, no one, and this is very important, I think, and this may also relate back to, I mean, both, even as they put here, actually, ideally all Abrahamic religion understandings, although I guess there are sects in each religion that see differently and want to establish some sort of supremacy, which I would never support no matter what group. But here it says, so it is the idea within these Abrahamian religions that people themselves should create and live in prosperity on the earth of God under God's guidance. In this world, no one will be slave to another, and all the people will live in freedom, developing their individual potentials on the basis of dialogue with God while living. So far, this idea, and now I love this because they're shelling out against everyone. So this idea of having a dialogue with God while living, developing individual potential, and to live in freedom. So far this idea is moved away to an uncertain future within Judaism. It is denied as heresy in Christianity, is considered not to be topical in the historically set Islam, and is objectively impossible on the basis of atheistic convictions of Marxism. Nevertheless, the idea of creation of earth of kingdom of God through the efforts of people themselves under the God guidance is a single idea, the distribution of which in different cultural societies can ruin the potential of described above scenario multi-optional policy that leads to the conflict aimed at leaving Quran in the historical legacy of humankind. The problems of Iran, Afghanistan, Iraq, and other countries and diasporas, the followers of the historically set Islam, can be creatively resolved only on the basis of initiatives of the people directed at creating kingdom of God on earth. Beyond this global and political context, these problems are unsolvable, and all of these countries are fated to be the fuel in the above described scenario, which basically is a scenario of conflict where both sides attempt to eradicate each other once they have achieved domination against, in this case, biblical project against Quranic Islam. So yeah, I just found it highly
makes
interesting.
Sense because this is in the late 80s, or when is this written?
No, this document is from 2010. This is 2010.
Okay, so basically anything that's after the fall of the wall, you've got a new emerging interest in Russia in all of the prohibited literature. And so you're going to have Bulgakov be, a shocking revelation to Russia. If it's interesting to me as an American passively, I can only imagine, like, to a Russian who's actually grown up in the collapsed Soviet Union, that book would be, like, biblically prophetic. And so for them to say, okay, we need to have a religious understanding, that's also true what they're saying universally around the world. There are many belief structures built around making the world a better place, right? And this idea of under God, what does that mean? What are we really talking about? The Islamic idea of God is different. It's a little bit more ambiguous in a sense. Not in the militaristic ideology, but in true Islam, God is more or less everything, and a creative force, and not just some sort of a personified anthropic being that looks like you or me.
Which has big overlaps with different New Age ideas as well. So still, I'm not exactly sure who is really fighting or who is actually seeding which ideas. Just like I mentioned earlier, the idea potentially of the social state actually also being a whatever Mohammedan, Quranic, Islamic concept in some
Well, I think
ways.
that, David's talked about this, David Plate, that ideas are not property, really. People might find truth. And so the idea that, I also Saint Germain said that if you want to practice alchemy, you're going to have to acknowledge God. You're not going to have to like him, but you're going to have to acknowledge what God really is and all that. I feel like it doesn't make you a good or evil person, or it doesn't make your religion wicked or righteous that you acknowledge what's true. Like, truth is something that you might need to acknowledge for your own power and for your own selfishness, as well as because you're trying to serve, if you were trying to serve, righteousness.
Yes, I agree. Okay, then here, this is just some more, let's say, official history documentation. Isn't that pretty much exactly the same time as the Civil War in the US? So here it's apparently
right
a
after,
war between Germans and French. And even there, I think from World War I, there is even footage, and even have a recent one, if it is correct. Let's see. Not sure, of course, can be whatever, but apparently there was like, I don't know, a Russian running into the Ukrainian trench or something, if that's correct. And apparently, people just be like, oh, sorry, like I'm in the wrong place. Go back.
You're like, that's all right.
It's also just like, they're there probably because they get paid and everything, and they're not really interested actually in shooting anyone in the face. So I'm like,
yeah, they don't want to kill each other. They're cousins,
Exactly.
The Franco-Prussian War, we call it in America, because it was with the Northern German Confederation of Prussia, right? So the Franco-Prussian War is a continuation of the Confederate War, because the Confederates in North Carolina and Charlottesville were predominantly Prussians, and there were Prussians in Louisiana as well, and lots of them. So they, after the Civil War in the United States, they left a lot of them when they could, and they would go back to Prussia, because a lot of them were 20 years old or 40 years old by the time they were done with the war. And so there was a lot of generals that continued on in the Northern Confederacy in the Prussia, but they were destroyed essentially. Like this war continued on, right? Like we talk about Maximilian was killed in Mexico in 1866, 1867. 3 years before this, a year and so after the alleged ending of the United States War of Northern Aggression, Civil War. But it's World War Zero, right? I mean, in World War Zero continues. It's kind of ambiguous. Do you say 1812 is World War Zero and it continues on until 1870, or is this its own conflict? You start to see everyone's wearing the same colors. It's all black and white, but they're wearing dark blue outfits, right? It's like the dark blue for this Masonic New World takeover that's happening. And it's also post-Napoleon. You have Napoleon II, Napoleon's brother. It just continues on around the world, this beginning of a Masonic alternative to nobility, right? Nobility is becoming, they're fighting against nobility in every country at this point, in South America particularly, but in Europe, in the Confederacy, in the Prussian Confederacy, it was destroyed by 1880. And after that, it's folded into, the Weimar Republic, right?
Right, yeah. And
what's it called? The Treaty of Westphalia?
Yes. I don't know the details about this, but that exists, yes.
The second Treaty of Westphalia, I think it's the second 1880, was it 1887? 1878. I'm sorry. I'll figure it out.
But I got something related. So what we have, okay, here I just wanted to show very briefly that this is like a 50 year ago. Apparently, I wasn't even so aware of that because obviously I'm born a lot later. But that after the war, apparently in Germany and Austria, all the different alliance powers basically each set up their own radio station, which is, I don't know, kind of hilarious to me. And then it was like, yeah, which station you like the most, this and that. And that's also kind of explains, of course, the early cultural imperialism and why Germany is so effectively become one of the US colonies, and of course Austria kind of an appendage to that in certain respects. Basically because, of course, first thing they did, you know, they got in all their music and whatever they had and whatever their opinions were on the world. And yeah, it's just, you know, nice to check out. And then because you mentioned about someone was killed or whatever, I mean, check this out. Whoever can believe this. Curses Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his astounding death car. And then apparently, if I understood this right, the date or the plate which he had, yeah, here, basically was the same date as then the armistice was signed or something like this. So
wow, yeah,
just makes it seem highly ritualistic, of course. November 11, which is a favorite date, both, you know, 9/11, I mean, even here, again, 9/11, 11/9, so I'm sorry, the coding by now. I don't know what the 8 here does. They should have waited till 19 to make the armistice, but they will have a reason for that as well. So yeah, highly coded, because this is another one of these cases where, oh, someone got randomly assassinated. But even here, then I think they say in the official story, the first guy missed and the second guy missed, and then someone threw a bomb or whatever happened.
No, eventually they were freaked out. The cab driver was like, "Wow, I can't believe the assassination attempt failed." He turns around this alley and parks the car, and then a guy runs up and shoots him. Like, he's like, "Wow, I can't believe I missed him 3 times." And he turns like, "Oh, there he is." Bam, you know.
Yeah, so highly suspicious story.
He's like, "Look, I'll pull the car around for you. I'm sorry you missed." Like, you know.
I'm sorry, I'll just park in the gang alleyway.
Yeah, exactly. Have you been? Did you go there? I forget. Did you go to the Sarajevo spot where the vehicle is?
No,
on the
no.
street.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like right on the street corner, and it's like they have the car.
It's still there?
Well, I don't know if it's the original. I think it is, but like they have at least they have a model of the car out on the street. I think they have the original inside. And you go into the museum, you can see a bunch of regalia and pieces, and all about the day he died. You know, but there you can take a picture. I have a picture of me in the car on the street corner, right where he was shot in the spot. But I think I sat in the chauffeur seat, just you know.
All right. So one of the last things here, I just randomly found this site. I still have to go through it. This is apparently a map collection site. Not sure if you ever heard of this. I can't tell how relevant it is or not, but seems interesting. Oh, look, here we have star forts. That's always a good one. If they load, yeah. So all kinds of historical maps on this website. I'll definitely browse around a little bit more. Maybe a cool collection for anyone interested in this kind of stuff. Then everyone can, yeah, more from Divergent, so more old world photos, anyone who likes those. Then there is again, Mindshock, a watch party for Old World Order, which has, of course, related topics. A logical analysis of that movie done by Bruce on Mindshock. We showed the close combat. For some reason, I pulled up this guy, maybe even just to show, was he himself important enough? Well, he was at the university, and then I guess his son, yeah, his son is the prime minister today. So we,
Found it.
Nice.
Yeah.
So here we got Benzion Netanyahu. Unfortunately, I don't remember exactly anymore why I pulled him up.
Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister.
No, it's his father, basically.
Negligible episode. Oh, okay.
Oh, but it's also cool. He lived to 100 years. That's pretty amazing, I have to say. Yeah, unfortunately, I forgot exactly why. Maybe just to show that he was relevant enough. And then, strangely enough, yeah, I mean, he was an activist in the revisionist Zionist movement. And then, you know, strangely enough, his son becomes... Oh, but even here, look at this. What is this? His field of expertise was the history of Jews in Spain. I mean, that's a lead, I would say, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, I'll just leave it at there, and I have to look into this more. But that's
that'd be useful if you wanted to try to run a country and you were Jewish and you're like, well, when was the last time we did it really well? You're like, well, Maimonides, right? Who knows about that?
Right. Within today officially accepted medieval, or how you call it, ancient history. So that's that's
Maimonides isn't
interesting.
ancient. Maimonides is I guess that's funny. Ancient, we might, like, as a xenophobic society, say it's ancient because we don't understand enough to comprehend the recordings, but ancient means before recording. So we have recordings from that time. So it's pretty well documented, right? Like that's the craziest thing. People just can't believe what they're reading. They just say, "Oh, that's impossible. That we're so advanced. They must be writing about fairy tales." But it's like Star Trek, dude. They have journals. The literacy rate in Cordoba was like very high.
Yeah, well, basically my question, of course, then just is this used as a justification, and is there then maybe some relabeling going on? As we understand, there is maybe not as clear as a demarcation line between what we would call original Jews and original Arabs or whatever, Europeans, as some may then make it out to be. And then, of course, if you think about it today, supposedly, also David says this, that now in Israel itself, there is pretty good equality, let's say. But of course, overall, the situation there is still, nowhere near from, I don't know, resolved. And then, of course, these historical arguments can also lend to further conflict if you construe them in a particular way, right? So I just find that interesting, this connection. All right, then we're pretty much through. There's a few more things, but we don't need to go through all of them. Anyone who likes, kindly check out the link page. Maybe just to show
What's apocastasis? Apocastasis? What does it say?
Yes. Yeah.
Of
course, you would be interested. Someone else put a Greek word in, I think today, or even in your chat, which was apo something else, which was about being tranquility, let's say, or serenity, tranquility, inner tranquility. It's also a nice Greek term, let's say. And this is, so apokatastasis is the restoration of creation to a condition of perfection. Right, I picked this up from Jordan Bates, who did a Substack on, let's say, the 5 things that go wrong with New Age and how it should change. And apparently coming from a Christian perspective and maybe showing the differences, whereas certain New Age philosophies would say everything is already perfect, and this would more be the idea, no, the world is broken or whatever and has to be returned to a state of perfection.
Yeah.
Yes.
Return to innocence. Yeah.
But here, the Second Council of Nicaea condemned as heresy any teaching including certain forms of apocastasis that would deny eternal punishment for unforgiven sins. It's amazing.
That ought to show 'em.
Although the interpretation of this and related anathemas are disputed, since some Orthodox fathers, such as Gregory of Nyssa, taught apokatastasis and were never condemned. Here we have a connection with supposes Zoroastrianism.
Apokatastasis, I think, is what we're supposed to say in English.
Apokatastasis.
But the idea that it's a universal jubilee, right? That's the idea Christ is saying, that everything will be returned. And this is saying, well, we have to nuance that with everything except for the people that don't fall in line with the state.
Yeah. And then maybe out of this list today, last thing I want to show, and I honestly didn't watch it. This also, of course, very interesting. Someone at some point said, like, oh, this guy has just got the right
8 hours later. Yeah, it was wild. I can't even believe it. I haven't watched it yet because I don't even get, like, what did he do? Did he just, like, get up and go to the bathroom, like, 8 times? Like, what do you do? Like, or 3? What was this podcast? I haven't watched it yet. 8 hours?
I don't know. I don't even know if I want to. I mean, but I'm realizing
it's supposed to be chill. I hear good things because it's got like a bunch. It's just like a hangout with Elon and his team, and there's like 8 dudes, or is it 4 to 8 dudes that are with him
really?
talking
So many?
about it.
Okay.
Yeah, so, it's a huge team of people.
Okay, so maybe I'll get time to check out
we have to watch it. It's just 8 freaking hours. It's like a semester.
I have to
in a podcast.
So
I think it's
basically,
important because this is the future. I mean, these are the guys who are really, they're the ones who've been
so let me
chosen
just
to do
say,
it.
yeah. But let me just say about this future. So I still, and please anyone in chat who knows of any proper application, tell me. But so far, I have seen no degree of cyborgization that really is sustainable, does not have long-term detrimental health effects, is not crude as if from a 70s cyberpunk role-playing game or something. I haven't seen it yet, and I'm sure it would be possible. But honestly, I have 0% trust.
the
Let me just finish my
quadriplegic, yeah.
sentence.
Right.
I have 0% trust that any of these guys will come up with anything that's actually useful and beneficial. I'm very sorry. I'm saying it's definitely possible with the right tech and the right procedures and so on. I don't see these guys bringing anything, because also here they talk for so many years. What are they doing? Hooking up some electrodes to a monkey or whatever? And this is a joke. And anyone who has a real application, again, without detrimental long-term health negative effects and all of that.
Bro's
please
playing
show me,
Counter-Strike and chess. I mean, quadriplegic, horrible accident. Now he's able to get back up very soon.
Thank you
We'll
so
be
much
able to
for that
communicate.
appeal to emotion. And that was the next thing I wanted to bring up, because of course these things exist, and there it could be great if you can, replace your leg or something. But number one,
Or like if you have a broken spine and then you're able to connect the signal wirelessly, yeah. Like these are the things that are like they have these things now.
Yes,
right?
but
That's what's
number
happening.
one, again, is this really the best type of non-invasive technology as it could potentially be? I'm 100% sure it is not. And I believe it is not only because they can't do it yet, but also because the focus is somehow off kilter. And the second thing, and relates to whatever, blindness, whatever it could be, which can even be treated by simple modern medical procedures. I want to ask the question, how the F did this even happen in the first place? And here we have nutrition, safety standards, 100 million factors, psychological, economic instability, wars, and so on, that first cause these things. And then I can come along and be like, oh, I'm so great, I make you the cyborg leg and pay me $500 million for developing it. Whereas at first place, you just couldn't have done the war to make 100 billion extra. You see what I'm saying? So that's why I'm somewhat wary of that, the way this is heralded. And again, if anyone knows of a real app that's useful, please let me know. Yeah.
I mean, there's tons of the concept is very useful. Like the ability to know things instantaneously, to be able to be in another place simultaneously, in another body at the same time, or to go travel without using fossil fuel to the other side of the world through another person's body. All of these things that I mean, the answer is everything you've ever thought of. Any of your dreams about being a psychic that you think in the ancient time Taoists were able to talk to animals, all those things. The problem is that we've romanticized them to say it's just like, oh, well, in the old days, it was easier. Look, it's better and easier. And I don't know if that's true. It probably in the old days was Antiquitech as well. There probably were systems that, that helped us, like radio systems that existed. Maybe not. Maybe we're just like missing out on this, how convenient it is to just magically poof things into smoke. But most of the stories of magic craft and alchemy are like really disciplined chemists that are putting hard work into order of operations, right?
I mean, the question is, to what extent do we damage our own inherent telepathic ability by too much engaging in these worlds? I mean, even here we are doing that now, obviously. But, I think should be careful with that also in terms of that, again, as I always like to say, how much biological potential or divine, if you will, is already in, or just human, if you will, for lack of a better term,
Well,
is already.
on one hand, people used to be smarter, and now we're stupid. It could be that we've lost so much
That's what
memory.
I'm saying. How much is inherent in us, and we could redevelop. And here, this is just a diversion. Like, oh, get this chip, you can do this and that. Well, if you would eat properly and whatever else, change your lifestyle and change society a bit, I think many of these functions naturally would come on, and there would not even be a need for any of that. Yeah.
Apocatastasis, bro. We just need some apocatastasis. Yeah.
Yeah, but then the question is, you fix it up with some chrome, yeah, or you fix it up just, by being more friendly and eating healthy, yeah. So it really very much seems to me that this line of thinking, aside from the fact that Elon Musk's grandfather, Technocracy Incorporated, Canada, and all of that, it very much seems to me like they are creating solutions for problems that are civilization problems, where they could at the same time apply their technology knowledge and finance or whatever they are supposedly having to actually fix these problems on a systems level basis, instead of then coming up with this thing, which obviously always will include some sort of agenda, some sort of nudging and all of that. And I can live without it. That's all I can say. So yeah, I think that's it for me
Well,
for
it's
today.
probably the healthier choice than putting in a computer wire into your brain. It's hard to argue with that. But progress, Raph. You just
at least, like I said, at least bring the proper tech that's non-invasive and that doesn't give you brain damage or whatever and makes you crazy.
Well, I think
I'll
that's kind
consider
of.
it, yeah.
I think all right. That's the thing. So never be the first adopter of a new technology, but
Yeah, learn from Apple. Never buy the first 3 generations.
But the Amish, yeah, with Apple, don't buy the first 3 or 4, yeah, not just the first. But with the Amish, they're using computers now. Like there are New Order Amish that have the internet and they have to use email because they do business and everything like that. They waited 20 years. And they waited 40 years if you really
From
think
what
about
I
it.
saw, even here they do it smart. They have a special small room set up. They go into their business, then they leave, and the phone is turned off. I mean, that's a healthy digital relationship if you want to have any.
And they waited 20, 30 years after everyone else, after several generations to see what happened, to kind of figure out what level it would be okay to fit into their reality. It's not they're not an early adopter. So the same thing with what kind of computer they're using. They're using Linux and Ubuntu. Like they have a Amish OS that's like stripped down, right? Seriously. And that's freaking great. And so I think
a Linux distribution?
Yeah, there's an Amish
Amish
Linux distribution. Yeah. And so you can imagine the same thing with Neuralink, that in 20 years after 5 years, I mean, these corporations have 5-year plans. So within 20 years, you're going to have so many open source options. And right now it takes like 30 minutes I can go to a website through a PS4 to jailbreak it. I can log in on a PlayStation to a website and it will put Linux on it. The idea that they can lock down technology, they can't lock down their best military satellites. So it's just, sure, I get it, but I feel like the bigger thing is just being able to surveil more. But I think with surveillance comes open society, because the more that you can see everything and you can control everything, the less scared you are of people doing anything, talking or anything. You're just like, whatever. We can just literally shut down all of their brains at the protest if we had to. So I think in the future you're going to see a lot more freedom with a lot less privacy, right? Like those things will go hand in hand. That'll be the way that they take away your privacy, is by offering you back more and more self-determination. They're like, oh, we're watching you. It's like it's like a kid. They're like letting a kid out of the house more often.
Yeah, 2 generations after they completely destroyed your country, yeah, basically. Yes.
World.
Wherever you are, pretty much. Yes. Yeah, I think that's it for me for today.
That's pretty
Thank you
base.
so much, Andreas. Thanks everyone for listening.
Take them back to commency.at so they can see your website and know where to go to find you. Guys, go to Commency.
You can be right. Oh yeah, and also because I got that email, I was so kind of even responded. There is a known Chinese domain scam where they contact you and they make it seem, they say like, oh, we really want to use this name and we want to ask you if it's okay. And they want to register some Chinese domains. And I just kind of wrote back, like, I have no business partners in China, like what they ask for. So this is just my name. Like, I don't care. And then I got a second email because the first one was actually, it seemed real. Maybe they can spoof it to that extent, but it's actually seemed to be a real email from a Chinese domain registrar, which wrote me. And I wrote that back to them, what I just said. And then I got an email, but the second email was from 163.com, which is like a common Chinese mail service. And they then pretended to be affiliated with Hongshun Limited. And this is quite a relevant company in China. So apparently the end game of this, but it didn't ask me anything yet, is to, I don't know, basically coerce or whatever you into buying the Chinese domains because you think that some important Chinese company wants to get them or whatever. I don't know. So it's strange, but I didn't quite get it at first and only later researched it. Actually, David helped me with this or just told me about it because at first it wasn't obvious to me that they want anything from me. It really seemed just like they're asking.
Dave's like,
I
oh,
don't
you
care.
poor lad. Let me tell you, I've been through this. Yeah.
Yeah, and he says it's a good money. But the strange thing really is, again, that the first email actually came from the proper domain of that registrar. So this means that the registrar kind of must be in on it.
Is in on the scam.
And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe they have too many CN domains that they want to sell. So I don't know.
Keeping
kind of funny.
CN relevant. Yeah.
So yeah, so here's the website. We got here under log, you have the link list for the last shows. And of course, there's some Tartaria links with all kinds of cool channels. On index, you can see all the stuff I'm doing and also how to connect and how to support. And on YouTube, of course, there is this show live right now and all the other wonderful stuff and presentations for your enjoyment. And of course, let's just forget, and we'll do this right here. Subscribe to Xirtus, yes.
Yeah,
and the only reason I'm not subscribed to it is because it's a separate profile.
Wow, we're up to 1,000 videos. That's crazy. I didn't realize.
Almost. Oh yeah, and 120K. Congratulations! Now finally, you know, the speed is picking up.
If only the view count would go with it. I feel like some of these videos, but you know, the live ones, it's hard to fight. It's hard to fight the war. We'll keep trying.
Yeah, it's very strange, but maybe eventually it will be revealed why the algorithm is acting in this particular way. Did the revised documentary get a few extra views?
Yeah, it looks like it's going okay. It's got 157 now. I think it was at 120.
It's increasing. Yeah, so that's good. So at least some Thundercats fans also want to take a look at history.
Are getting their brains completely cracked open.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Andreas, as always, and thanks everyone.
Love you, bro. Peace.
This next story has been suppressed by mainstream media. Let's go to Andreas